I love to talk about starting something new. All of you know out there, my new mitters, we are faced in our midlife. We have our first half where we're learning what we're doing. We might take a little bit of a break, a halftime, and then our second half, we are ready to go and start creating some amazing things by using our experiences in our first half. And that's why I'm excited today to be joined by national media expert, NBC News, MSNBC, and CNN Headline News anchor, alum, and a keynote speaker, Miss Lynn Smith. Lynn, welcome to the New Mid.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm so glad to be talking about this.
Well, I love your story. We have some things in common. We're both former entertainment people, and you in the newsroom, me more with the daytime soap operas. But you have taken your life experience and created some incredible. We were just talking about one of your clients who is now going to be on the Today Show.
I just said to you,
Congratulations.
thank you. I got off the phone with her and it's like, this is why I love my job. When you see people's dreams come true, it is literally the most fulfilling thing I can describe. And you know, you make such a good point about this new stage in your life that you can take everything that you've learned and absorbed and re-engineer it for a whole new set of possibilities. And oftentimes, because of the wisdom that you've gathered over all those years, many times it's for much more impactful work. Because at this stage in our life, that's what we're really focused on, right? What are we going to do that makes an impact in a positive way?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And that's what's so exciting. I call these our power years because we really can make a powerful impact in the world. So let's take a step back. And can you tell me a little bit about your story? How did you get involved in getting into the newsroom?
You know, I tell this story a lot because it's a good lesson in taking a leap of faith in yourself. I was a senior in college at Miami of Ohio, and one of the alumni was an executive at NBC, and he came to speak to the school. And I walked in with my resume, and I walked up to him, and I said, "It's been my dream to work at NBC." And I handed it over to him, and he sent it on to the right person, and that got me an interview for the NBC Page program. And that led to a series of jobs as an assistant to a lot of the executives. So essentially a secretary for about 4 years. But what I always tell people is you really need to fish where the fish are, and getting in front of executives that make decisions. That was sort of a strategy of mine of impressing them with hard work and showing them that I had ideas. Got me another promotion at the Today Show where I was an associate producer. And then that led to an on-air career where I was an online contributor for them, but then had to cut my teeth in local, of course. So I went to Hartford, Connecticut, Philadelphia, then back to New York, and then went national. And I think all of those experiences taught me that no matter how many failures you have, because while that sounds like a lot of success, there were so very many failures in between there. If you just keep going, push through, you will get to what your success is. And that lesson was more powerful to me than probably anything else. And it helped me now take that leap of faith in myself to start a new career after 15 years as a news anchor. I needed that reminder that, yes, I'm going to fail as an entrepreneur, but just like it did in my news career, it will, if I just keep going, lead to what will hopefully be my success.
Well, there are no mistakes, right? There's just
That's right.
lessons.
That's right. That's
Well,
exactly right.
Well, it's interesting because you went from behind the camera to in front of the camera to now behind the camera, helping other people get in front of the camera.
Right. It's almost like a game of jumping jacks. You know, I think that while I had always loved being on camera, really the storytelling was what was so important to me. And so it doesn't matter if I'm telling that story and handing that script over to today's show anchor to read it, or if I'm reading it, or if I'm now helping, you know, one of my clients that's going to be on the Today Show tomorrow, which is also ironic and so full circle, share her story. You know, it's about storytelling in a positive way. And frankly, if I'm being honest, it's part of the reason why I got out of the news business as an anchor, because I felt like there was a change in journalism. And it wasn't as easy for me to tell those stories that I really wanted to tell. And I needed to listen to that. And maybe it wasn't me to tell them, maybe it was other people, but I needed to show them a way to do that.
And what's so great though is now you have been able to re-engineer your
Mhm.
experience, and you are helping so many other people be able to do that, which is exciting. And I can only imagine that you have to, your own self, when you were talking about through your failures and helping your clients deal with fear and self-doubt.
Oh my goodness. So I just got off a coaching call yesterday with 4 very high level leaders at a $1 billion company. I'm coaching them in my green room. They're all doing media training, and they're all highly successful, high performers. And I asked each and every one of them, I do this in every single one of my courses, what are you afraid of? You need to say that out loud, because 1, you have permission, you're in a safe place, even though you're among colleagues. But 2, when you say it out loud, you realize sometimes how ridiculous it is. So for example, the leader that I asked that question to said, I know that I am really successful at this, but there are times when I walk into something and I don't feel like the expert. And they call me an expert. And it's that version of imposter syndrome. And I'm like, when are they going to find me out? And what I told them was, you may or may not be surprised, but I'm going to open up everybody's mic, and I want to ask each and every one of you if you've ever felt that way. And every single one of them said 1,000%. And I knew that they were going to say that because that's the case for every single person that I coach. They have some version of imposter syndrome. And what I explained to them is, after seeing it with so many high performers, and myself included, I have it too. I wanted to create the methodology to help us fight that. And I needed it to work for me too. And so it's really a brain bully. Your brain bully is that voice in your head that's telling you, am I good enough? Do they think I'm smart enough? Did that come out right? We need to create the tools to silence that brain bully, but not shove it down in a corner, but engage it and say, why do you think that way? Why are you challenge your brain bully? And listen, sometimes your brain bully is right in front of your face. I was told by a news director that I'd never make it in television. There's always going to be somebody that's presenting you with that criticism that makes you doubt yourself. But when you stop looking for validation externally and realize that internally you have everything that you need, instantly your confidence will shift. I just want everybody that's listening right now to try that. What if externally validation did not matter? Internally, you had all the validation you needed, therefore the confidence to be able to overcome your imposter syndrome. And I just want to see what that does. And I would love to hear from people. I'm on Instagram. I love to communicate with people as they try some of these things out. But try it out and see whether or not that makes a difference, because you're not alone. People just don't talk about it, and nobody asks you the question in a safe enough space, but you need to find that person who will challenge you with that questioning.
And what I love is your visualization about a brain bully, because while you were saying that, I can't help but thinking about punching it in the nose.
Totally. And name it, Michelle. You have to name your brain bully. Every single person that I work with, they name their brain bully. It's usually like some punk in high school that was like doubting them. Or I named mine Bob because my son got a fish and he named it Bob. And I think that's the most hysterical thing ever and so random. So every time my brain bully comes up, I'm like, oh, Bob. And I just laugh, and I realize how ridiculous it is.
Right?
And so name it today and then punch it in the face.
Well, that's
love
so
that
funny,
idea.
because I do actually have I coach my clients as well to name their negative voice. Mine is actually Nigel. He's an
Really?
uptight interior designer, British, who's like the white glove, very judgmental.
Totally.
And
And
so a lot of times I
judgmental
have
and
to,
such a perfectionist. I love it.
right. Yes, exactly. And a lot of times I need to kick Nigel to the curb.
Yes.
So what you're very inspiring, and your successes, like you said, yes, there were failures, but a lot of, successes in there. What inspired you to want to inspire other people? Was there a moment that you decided, you had an aha moment? What was that? As someone's thinking right now, listening to this and wanting to start something new, but they haven't pulled the trigger, or they're having, we just talked about fear or self-doubt. What was it for you that finally pushed you to cross over and do this amazing, inspiring work?
I think that if I'm really honest, I wasn't the mother I wanted to be. I was a morning news anchor that was leaving for work at 5 o'clock in the morning. And at night, when I'd put my son to bed and he'd be like, "Are you going to be home in the morning?" And I'd have to say no. And he would get upset. And so we came up with this thing where he would describe for me something he'd want drawn. And so every morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm like drawing a fire truck with like spaghetti falling out of it and like a police car with fire in the back. And he would describe it in such detail, and I'd put it under his door for him to see when he woke up in the morning, to feel like I was there with him. And then they'd FaceTime with me on the way to school. And when the pandemic hit, my show was taken off the air and I was reporting from home. And I was able, you'd think that that would be like the worst thing to ever happen to an anchor. And I realized I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm at home. I'm still telling stories, but I'm with my family and I'm with my children. And I knew that I wasn't necessarily feeling great about what it was that I was producing, right? Like I was a product. I was delivering and it felt very self-indulgent. It was just, me there on TV. And what could I do that would make my sons proud and make them, down the road someday when they're trying to think of what their career is going to be? What would make them inspired? If I'm going to be a working mom, it better be something that's impactful for my kids. So I think that that really put that gut feeling where it was like, I know this is not right. And I have to have a leap of faith to know that I'll figure out what is. And that's when everything sort of started to fall into place. I just made small incremental steps forward and just kept going through the doubt, because there's a lot of fear when you start your own business and change a career, but you have to have that faith and that confidence. And we talk a lot about this word confidence. I don't think anyone really understands what it is. They think that maybe it's like this secret potion that all of a sudden you just drink and you're confident. But the way I look at confidence is like, imagine arrogance, which is the opposite of confidence. Arrogance is thinking that you're good at everything. Confidence is believing you can do anything despite any circumstances. So no matter how many times you're rejected, you'll still put your face forward. No matter how many times you've fallen on that face, you'll stand back up. That's confidence. And so starting a business took confidence, and I fell on my face and plenty of times up at night, worried about how am I going to make this work? But because I kept going through that, it ensured that some version of it does. It always does. And any person I've ever met, and it's an entrepreneur, follows that, and it hasn't proven itself wrong yet. So I think that's pretty good data.
Absolutely. And the word belief in there, believing in yourself, betting on yourself, and those small steps moving forward. That's key, I think, to anyone's success. When you were doing your interviews, when you were meeting people, was there anyone that stuck out that maybe sort of emulated this?
Well, I'll tell you who my favorite person to interview of all time was, Dolly Parton. And why that is honestly someone that emulates this is because she was true authenticity. She's exactly who you want her to be, and you can tell that's really her. And one thing I tell people about the secret to being good on television or good on video or whatever it is, that's the real secret, is can you be authentic? Can you be real? Can you be relatable? And can you be yourself? And it's
Absolutely.
actually the hardest thing for people to do. They
It
think they
is.
want to sound smart. They want to make sure they don't sound like they're, going to be found out that they're not really the professional that they say that they are when they actually are. That authenticity is like the secret sauce, and it's the easiest thing to do, but your brain bully stops you from it oftentimes. But sitting down with her and being able to interview her was really like massively impactful to not only have proof that authenticity is the key, but to see it in action with like a girl crush type person.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to meet Dolly Parton. I was fortunate enough to spend the day with Betty White. So that was
Oh,
pretty incredible.
that would be another one. Like, talk about national treasure.
Well, she showed up with just her little makeup kit, nothing else, no entourage. She just wanted to work at 88
Yeah.
years old, and she laughed and had fun. So talk about authenticity. And it's interesting that you say that, because most talk shows, 95% of talk shows don't work. But I was fortunate enough to help develop and launch The Talk. And the reason why I think it has worked for so long, and why it worked in the beginning, is because the hosts were authentic. Because if you have a talk show and the host is not authentic, it's not going to last. I mean, it just doesn't. The viewers see through it. They see through you. You can't fool them. You might be able to for a short amount of time. But what's interesting to me about Dolly Parton is it cracks me up that Jeff Bezos gave her $100 million to donate to charities because he couldn't do it himself. So what is it about someone like Dolly, and when you interviewed her, that you brought this across? Were you able to relate to her? Did you look up to her? Did you see her kind of like a mentor?
I think it's that it wasn't about her. Even though it was about her, everything's about Dolly. Kind of nothing's about Dolly. It's about what she brings to her listeners and her followers and her fans. That's why people love her. I think that's very similar to someone like a Taylor Swift. It's like they have found a way to connect to their fans in such a powerful way that the fans change and grow from just literally being, I mean, you see these people at the Taylor Swift concert, they're like, Swifties are real. And I think the same is true for her followers. So it's what stuck with me is what she does, which is making incredible music, but you see how charitable she is as well. She works a lot in literacy and in underserved communities. And that's because it's not all about her. She was given a gift. And I think that that spoke to me, and I felt, something similarly in what I wanted to do with my life in a like minuscule way to something like that, of just like, if you are doing something that makes someone feel good about themselves, gosh, what a gift, like you can't ask for anything more when you're doing work like that.
And it's interesting. Something popped into my head while you were talking. I can't help but wonder, you're making huge impact in a lot of people's lives. But do you think you'll want to ever go back in front of the camera?
I get that question all the time. I don't miss it. I don't know why. I'm surprised myself. I think so often, and I've had this conversation with countless of my friends who are still anchors and in the business, is there's part of me that's relieved that I don't have that level of scrutiny on me anymore, right? So I've been told I'm too big, I'm too small, I'm too young looking, I'm too old looking. You're only as good as your last show. And I think there's a huge sense of relief not having that anymore. And I mean, never say never, like I could be one of those, like go back at 60 and do something. But I think that, it surprised me a lot that I don't miss it. I do get to host a podcast. I host a podcast for Munchkin, and it's a parenting podcast. So I feel like I get some of my hunger for, the skill of interviewing and probing questions out there and getting to topic and getting to the meat. But I certainly don't miss the 3 a.m. wake up calls.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I know. And being under a microscope, that is not fun. That definitely. So I could absolutely see being relieved of not having to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to take a little bit of a turn. If I were to have a magic wand and I could get rid of one thing from the world, like I can just wand it and it disappears, what would that be? What would you want it to be?
Gosh, such a great question. So I really do feel that if we could wave a wand and diminish the fear of failure, the world would be forever changed. And here's why. I think that if people really understood that everything they need exists internally and that they don't need any of the external validation that they're seeking, they would really take the shot, right? And the thing that's holding them back is the fear of failure, because that would give them the external validation that they're not seeking, which is you failed, you screwed up. That's what they're afraid of. And if that didn't matter, think about what would be created. Think about how much good would be done, and also how much dissatisfaction would be eliminated. I think there are a lot of people unhappy in their work. They're unhappy in their relationship, especially right now. We just had a request today from a newsroom for an expert on loneliness is an epidemic now. People are not happy after the pandemic in many cases. So imagine if we erase the fear of failure. And I would challenge anyone who's listening today, ask yourself this question. If I could eliminate my fear of failure, what is it that I would do? Big or small? Write it down. Literally, like, post it on your wall that you see every single day. And do one thing each day that gets you one step closer to what's on that wall. Maybe it's an email that you're sending to someone in a networking way. Maybe it's like something that you're purchasing, like a microphone, because you've always wanted to have a podcast. Whatever it is, commit to 30 days of doing one thing toward that thing on your wall and see what happens.
What's so great about that is it's all about starting something new. We've been talking about this podcast. We started and we're going to bookend it with now is the time.
Now's the time.
Don't waste another day. Like, take this challenge that Lynn has given you, which I love, and every single day, take one small step towards whatever that new thing is that you want to start. Lynn, this has been a wonderful time. Thank you so much for this conversation. How can people get in contact with you?
Thank you, Michelle. It's been such a great conversation. And I love what you're doing, inspiring so many people out there to go and enjoy and make an impact in this second stage of life, which frankly, I think is the more powerful one, because we have all of the lessons that we learned from our first half, right? So you can visit me on my website, which is lynnsmithtv.com. And I'm on all the socials at Lynn Smith TV.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Michelle. It's such a pleasure.